In this video, we are going to be looking at the concept of temperature. So as you can see in the following image, we have temperatures that can be cold and temperatures that can be hot. And temperature is something that we experience every day in our lives. Now, as you can see in the image on the left, we have an image of something that is really cold. We can see the snow. We can see the person with the jacket. We can see the person with the snow boots. In the picture on the right, we can see a picture of a place that even though it is 6:37 in the morning, it is already 122 degrees Fahrenheit, which is really hot. Now, when it comes to temperature, understand that temperature is going to be a measure of how hot or cold an object is when we compare it to another object. It indicates the heat flow from the object with a higher temperature to the object with a lower temperature. And understand that in order to measure temperature, a thermometer is going to be the instrument used to measure temperature. Okay? Now, understand that temperature, and as you can see, we have the illustration of a thermometer. Okay? That's what we have here specifically. Now, in addition to this, we can start seeing what are going to be the units for measuring temperature. So those units are, and I'm just going to highlight them: degrees Celsius, degrees Fahrenheit, and one that is not illustrated here, but is also there. We have a unit that is a capital K, that is called Kelvin. Okay, understand that Kelvin, we mostly use it in the laboratory. Fahrenheit is what we utilize in the United States in order to measure temperature. And Celsius is what is utilized in the rest of North America. So if you travel to Canada or if you go to Mexico, understand that Celsius is the units that the temperature outside in the environment, it is reported as. Now, it is very important for you guys that are majors in allied health to understand that the body temperature, it is actually found in the range. And that range goes from 96.8 all the way to 100.4. If the body temperature rises above 100.4 degrees Fahrenheit, in other words, 38 degrees Celsius, then that person is going to have a fever. If the temperature rises above 105.8, understand that that is a condition that is called hyperthermia, and that can lead to death. If the body temperature actually decreases below 96.8, understand that the person will have hypothermia. Even though it's not illustrated here in the slides, hypothermia can also lead to death. So, as you can see, we have the units of Fahrenheit specifically on the right of that thermometer, and on the left of the thermometer, we have the units in Celsius. And as you can see, they are at the same level because we can convert from one unit to the other. In order to do that, we are going to use several equations in order to accomplish those interconversions. So the first equation that we have here is where we are going to be converted degrees Celsius to degrees Fahrenheit. In the second equation is where we convert degree Fahrenheit to degrees Celsius. In the last equation, we can utilize it to convert degrees Celsius to Kelvin or Kelvin to Celsius. Okay? Understand that here is not illustrated, but let's say that you have to convert from Fahrenheit all the way to Kelvin. Then, at first, you're going to take your degree Fahrenheit and convert it to degrees Celsius. And in the second step of the equation, You're going to take your result in Celsius, and then you're going to utilize the equation to convert from Celsius to Kelvin to accomplish this. One of the reasons why I mentioned that you can convert from Kelvin to Celsius utilizing the next equation is that through algebra, you can rearrange the equation. So if you're trying to find Celsius from Kelvin, understand that degrees Celsius, okay, is going to be the temperature in Kelvin minus 273. Let's proceed now to look at some examples of these conversions. So now we are going to be exploring part C of the worksheet. So in part C, I want you guys to be able to write those equations. So again, the equations specifically for the conversions that I have, I illustrated in the previous slide. Here, I'm going to illustrate how to do problem 1, 2, and 3, okay? So when it comes to this, as you can see, the first one is a conversion between Celsius and Fahrenheit. So in order to accomplish that, then understand that we are going to be using the first equation, which states that temperature in Fahrenheit equals 1.8 multiplied by degrees Celsius, and we're going to add it to 32, okay? Then we are going to take, for doing problem 1, and I'm just going to do it in the bottom of the slide. For problem 1, I'm going to write my equation. Temperature in Fahrenheit equals 1.8 times degrees Celsius plus 32. So for the equation that I have, I'm going to do 1.8 multiplied by 16. I'm going to put those in parentheses, and I'm going to add 32. So when I plug in those numbers in my calculator, 1.8 times 16, and I'm going to add 32, understand that I get a value of 60.8, but because I was given 2 sig figs, I'm going to round this result to 2 sig figs. So my final answer in the problem is going to be 61. Let's go over problem number 2. In problem number 2, I'm going from Fahrenheit all the way to Kelvin. So what does that mean? That I need to first utilize the equation from Fahrenheit to Celsius, which states that temperature in Celsius is going to be degrees Fahrenheit minus 32. And then that value we are going to divide by 1.8. Then we're going to proceed to utilize the equation that states that temperature in Kelvin equals temperature in Celsius plus 273. So for problem number 2, at first, I'm going to say temperature in Celsius is 114 minus 32 divided by 1.8, and I'm going to get that result. So I do 114 minus 32 divided by 1.8. I find 45.556. I just rounded to 3 decimal places because it will get me close enough to my final answer. Then I'm going to take that value of 45.556, okay? And I'm going to use it for the next equation, which means temperature in Kelvin equals the 45.556, and I'm going to add it to 273, okay? When I do that, the value in the calculator is 318.556. But as I mentioned before, I am given 3 sig figs, so I'm going to round this value to 3 sig figs. So my final answer for this problem is going to be 319 units Kelvin. Let's go through the last problem. In the last problem, I'm converting from Kelvin to Celsius. So that means that I'm going to rearrange that last equation. So I'm going to say, well, since I'm finding temperature in Celsius, then that means that the temperature in Kelvin, I'm going to subtract from 273. And when I do that, temperature Celsius is going to be the Kelvin units, 19 minus 273. When I do that, I get negative 254. When I look at my sig fig count, there are 2 sig figs given. I look at my value. I'm going to round to 2 sig figs. So that means that my final answer for this problem is going to be negative 250.